Have you ever wondered why the loudest person in the room often feels the least at peace inside? And have you ever noticed that the most powerful growth in your life usually happens when nobody is watching? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to walk through a kind of success that does not depend on applause or proving anything to anyone. We are going to talk about working hard in silence, not as a hustle slogan, but as a spiritual practice rooted in wisdom, karma, and compassion. The first idea is that true success is not only what you achieve, but what you become while achieving it. The second idea is that silent effort purifies the mind, reduces suffering, and plants causes that ripen into stable results, while noisy effort often feeds ego, anxiety, and the need for validation. Let me tell you a story. Because the mind learns best when it can see a life unfolding. There was a person who wanted to change their life. Not in a dramatic fantasy way, but in a very real way. They wanted to be healthier, more focused, more financially stable, more emotionally steady, more trustworthy to themselves. They wanted to stop breaking promises to their own heart. They wanted to stop waking up with that familiar heavy thought. The thought that says you are behind, you are late, you are not enough, you have wasted too much time. At first, they did what most people do. They announced it, they posted it, they told friends, they described the plan in detail. They imagined the future version of themselves receiving praise. They pictured the moment when everyone would finally see them as disciplined, impressive, and successful. And then, something predictable happened. The first week was exciting. The excitement was not coming from the work itself. It was coming from the image of the work. It was coming from the identity of being the kind of person who is changing. The person worked hard for a few days, and when it felt difficult, they reached for the easiest fuel they knew: attention. They talked about how hard they were working. They looked for encouragement. They wanted someone to say, "Wow, you are amazing. Keep going." But attention is like sugar. It gives a quick spike and then leaves you empty. Because the moment you depend on external validation, your discipline becomes fragile. When praise comes, you feel strong. When praise does not come, you feel invisible. And when you feel invisible, the old habits return. Because those habits at least give you a predictable comfort. The person did not understand why they kept failing. They blamed themselves. They said they lacked willpower. They said they lacked motivation. They said they were lazy. They said something was wrong with them. But what was wrong was not their character. It was their strategy. They weren't trying to build a stable life on unstable fuel. Then life gave them a lesson through a small humiliation. They had told too many people about their big plan. A month later, nothing had changed. Someone asked, "How is it going?" The person smiled and made a joke, but inside they felt exposed. They felt the gap between who they wanted to be and what they actually did. They felt the pain of being seen, not as successful, but as someone who talks. That night, they sat alone, and something inside got honest. Not dramatic, just honest. They realized they were tired of performing the idea of success. They were tired of trying to look disciplined. They wanted to actually be disciplined. They wanted to build a life that felt clean inside, not just impressive on the outside. This is where the Buddha path to success begins. Not with perfection, but with honest seeing. In Buddhist language, seeing clearly is the beginning of wisdom. If you do not see the true causes of your suffering, you keep repeating it. If you do not see the true causes of your growth, you keep sabotaging it. So the person decided on a new vow. Simple and quiet. They decided to work hard in silence. Not as punishment, not as pride, but as practice. They would stop announcing. They would stop seeking applause. They would stop borrowing identity from future results. They would focus on causes. And that word causes is everything. Because in Buddhist thought, life unfolds through cause and effect. What you repeatedly think, say, And do becomes momentum. Momentum shapes your character. Character shapes your choices. Choices shape your relationships and your outcomes. This is karma, not as superstition, but as the logic of pattern. So if you want a different life, you do not begin by demanding different results. You begin by planting different causes, consistently, quietly, patiently. The person started with something almost boring. They chose one daily practice they could keep even on a bad day. Not an ambitious schedule that collapses in a week, but a realistic rhythm that could survive mood changes. They woke up and did a short period of stillness, not to force the mind quiet, but to meet the mind honestly. They watched the breath. They felt the body. They noticed the urge to reach for the phone. They noticed the mind trying to negotiate. They noticed the mind saying, "Do it later. You deserve rest. You can start tomorrow. You are already tired." And here is the key difference. Before, the person would argue with the mind and lose. Now, the person practiced a different response. They did not argue. They observed. They treated the mind like weather. A thought comes. A thought goes. A craving comes. A craving goes. A resistance comes. A resistance goes. Awareness remains. This is a form of success that most people never learn. The success of not being owned by your own impulses. At first, the person still failed sometimes. They still skipped days. They still procrastinated. They still fell back into old comfort. But something had changed. They stopped adding self-hatred. They stopped turning a slip into an identity. They stopped saying, "I am a failure." They started saying, "This is a pattern." And patterns can be trained. That is compassion. And compassion is not separate from discipline. Real discipline without compassion becomes cruelty. Cruelty creates more suffering. And suffering creates more escape behaviors. So the cycle continues. But discipline with compassion becomes steady. It becomes like a kind parent teaching a child to walk. When the child falls, you do not insult the child. You help the child stand. You encourage. You keep going. The person also started doing something else that changed everything. They stopped measuring success by feelings. They stopped expecting motivation to appear before action. They started letting action create motivation. This is a deep spiritual lesson. The mind loves to wait for the perfect mood. But the perfect mood is often just another excuse. Waiting for motivation is a subtle form of clinging. It is clinging to comfort. It is clinging to certainty. It is clinging to the fantasy that growth should feel easy. The Buddha path does not promise easy. It promises liberation through right effort, right understanding, and right heart. So the person practiced right effort. They did not go extreme. They did not force a schedule that destroyed them. They practiced balanced effort, a little every day, with consistency, with humility. Then, because they were no longer announcing their progress, something surprising happened. They had more energy. The energy that used to go into performing, explaining, defending, and seeking validation now went into actual work. This is one of the hidden costs of being noisy. Noise consumes life force. When you constantly seek attention, you constantly leak energy. You become dependent on reactions. Your mood rises and falls with likes, compliments, and external reassurance. That is a fragile life. Silence protects your energy. Silence builds inner stability. Silence makes you intimate with your own mind. And that intimacy is power. Over weeks, the person began to notice a new kind of confidence. Not the loud confidence that needs to prove itself, but quiet confidence. The confidence that comes from integrity. Integrity means your inner and outer life match. You say you will do something, and you do it. Not perfectly, not always, but more often. You become trustworthy to yourself. In Buddhist ethics, this is huge, because when you break promises to yourself, you weaken your own mind. You create inner doubt. That doubt becomes self-sabotage. When you keep promises to yourself, you strengthen your mind. You create inner respect. That respect becomes momentum. And this is how destiny changes. Destiny is not only what happens to you. Destiny is what your habits keep creating. When habits change, destiny changes. The person also learned to work with desire in a new way. They realized that desire is not the enemy. The enemy is grasping. Grasping is desire plus the belief that you must have something to be okay. That belief creates anxiety, comparison, and impatience. So they began to practice wanting without clinging. They would set a goal, then focus on the next step, not on the outcome. They would do the work, then release the obsession with how fast results came. This is where the Buddhist teaching on impermanence becomes a friend. Everything changes, which means results come in their own time. Your job is to plant, water, and remove weeds. You do not get to scream at the seed to grow faster. When the person felt impatient, they noticed impatience as an emotion, not a command. They felt it in the body. They breathed. They returned to the task. That moment is success. Because most people lose their future not through one big mistake, but through daily impatience. They quit early. They chase shortcuts. They abandon the boring practice. They move from one thing to the next, always starting, never deepening. But silent hard work is deepening. It is training the mind to stay. Staying is spiritual power. Staying with the breath. Staying with the body. Staying with discomfort without needing to escape. Staying with a long-term goal without needing immediate applause. Staying with kindness, even when it is not rewarded. Staying with honesty even when lying would be easier. The person also began to notice how ego tries to hijack success. Ego says, if you improve, you must show people. Ego says, if you grow, you must get credit. Ego says, if you achieve, you must become superior. But superiority is poison. The moment you feel superior, you create separation. Separation creates loneliness. Loneliness creates craving. Craving creates suffering. You may look successful, but you will not feel free. So the person practiced humility as part of their discipline. They reminded themselves that everyone is struggling with something unseen. They reminded themselves that their effort is not a weapon against others. It is a path back to sanity. This is compassion again. Compassion is not only about being nice. Compassion is about refusing to create more suffering with your pride. In time, the person started to taste another fruit of silent work. They became less reactive. Because a disciplined mind is not just a productive mind. It is a less reactive mind. When you train yourself to do what is right even when you do not feel like it, you also train yourself to pause before you lash out, to breathe before you speak harshly, to listen before you judge. So success began to show up in relationships. The person could apologize faster. They could argue less. They could set boundaries without drama. They could choose words more wisely. This is a kind of success the world rarely celebrates. But it is the kind of success that makes a life peaceful. Now, there was a turning point. The person faced a setback, a real one. Something that would previously have destroyed their motivation. Maybe a financial shock. Maybe a rejection. Maybe a health problem. Maybe a failure on a project they cared about. The old pattern would have been to collapse into despair, then escape into distraction, then declare the whole effort pointless. But because they had been working hard in silence, something different happened. They grieved. Yes. They felt disappointment. Yes. They felt fear. Yes. But they also had a stable practice. They returned to the breath. They returned to the body. They returned to awareness. They did not make the setback an identity. They treated it as an event. Impermanent, painful, but passing. This is wisdom. Wisdom sees that pain is part of life, but suffering is optional. Suffering comes from resistance, clinging, and the story that says, this should not be happening. I cannot handle this. My life is ruined. Silent discipline trains you to meet reality without dramatic collapse. And this is why it is the Buddha path to success. Because it is not only about winning in the world. It is about ending the inner war that makes you lose even when you win. The person also began to understand the meaning of right livelihood and right intention. They noticed that how you succeed matters. If your success is built on harming others, lying, exploiting, or feeding addiction, the karma returns as inner unrest. You might get money, status, and power, but you will pay with peace. So they practiced success with ethics. They chose honesty. They chose patience. They chose fair dealing. They chose work that did not require them to betray their conscience. That choice does not always look flashy. Sometimes it looks like slower growth. Sometimes it looks like fewer shortcuts. Sometimes it looks like saying no to opportunities that would have brought fast attention. But over time, the mind becomes clean. And a clean mind is a sanctuary. A clean mind is the foundation for any success that lasts. Now let me bring this into the daily reality of 25 and beyond. Because modern life is designed to pull you away from silence. You have notifications, algorithm, opinion, hot takes, endless comparison. People selling you their lifestyle, their morning routine, their productivity secrets, their spiritual brand. It is easy to feel like if you are not broadcasting, you are not existing. But the Buddha path is the opposite direction. It says, stop feeding the hunger for recognition. Stop making your worth dependent on being seen. Return to the present moment. Return to the breath. Return to right action. Working hard in silence is a rebellion against the culture of constant performance. It is also protection. Because the more you broadcast, the more you invite interference. People project onto you. People criticize. People praise and then you become addicted. People misunderstand. People compare. People compete. All of that pulls you out of your own center. Silence keeps you centered. Now, I want to address a misunderstanding. Silence does not mean secrecy driven by shame. Silence means privacy driven by wisdom. It means you do not expose your fragile seeds to the wind before they root. Because when your practice is new, it is tender. It needs protection. It needs consistency more than it needs discussion. The person learned to keep their plans small and their actions consistent. They started letting results speak. Not for ego, but because results naturally appear when causes are planted. Weeks turned to months. Months turned to a year. People began to notice something. But it was not because the person was advertising. It was because the person had changed. Their eyes looked calmer. Their speech was steadier. Their actions were more reliable. They were less dramatic, more grounded. This is awakening in everyday form. Because awakening is not only a mystical insight. Awakening is the end of unconscious living. And silent discipline is one of the most practical ways to wake up. Now, let us talk about the inner engine of this practice, the part that makes it sustainable. The sustainable engine is not fear. Fear can push you, but it burns you out. The sustainable engine is not shame. Shame can whip you, but it breaks you. The sustainable engine is not ego. Ego can drive you, but it never rests. The sustainable engine is clarity plus compassion. Clarity sees cause and effect. Clarity sees that every time you procrastinate, you plant the seed of stress. Every time you speak harshly, you plant the seed of conflict. Every time you lie, you plant the seed of distrust. Every time you practice, you plant the seed of strength. Compassion keeps you from turning discipline into cruelty. Compassion says, keep going. Compassion says, begin again. Compassion says, you are human. Train gently. When clarity and compassion work together, your effort becomes wise. Your mind becomes stable. Your path becomes steady. This is the Buddha path. Now, if you are listening and thinking, I want this, but I keep failing. Here is the most important thing to understand. Failing is part of training. The problem is not failing. The problem is unconscious failing. The kind where you collapse into identity and story. The moment you notice you slipped, you are awake again. Then you choose the next right action. That is practice. That is success. Silent hard work is made of small returns. Return to the breath. Return to the task. Return to kindness. Return to honesty. Return to patience. Each return is a seed. And seeds accumulate. Now I want to share a grounded reflection that often helps people stop romanticizing results and start respecting process. Imagine two people. One wants to look disciplined. The other wants to be disciplined. The first one talks more. The second one practices more. The first one is dependent on mood. The second one builds routine. The first one seeks attention. The second one seeks alignment. The first one is easily shaken by criticism. The second one is guided by conscience. Over time, the second person becomes unrecognizable. Not because they became perfect, but because they became steady. That is the kind of success that lasts. Now we are coming toward the end of this story. And I want to speak to the part of you that may be tired. The part that feels behind. The part that feels guilty. The part that feels like time is running out. If that is you, listen closely. You do not have to fix your life in one day. You do not have to become a different person overnight. You only have to plant one new cause today. One honest effort. One moment of silence. One act of discipline. One breath of presence. One choice that reduces suffering rather than multiplies it. That is how karma changes. That is how destiny changes. That is how you become free. I have watched people around me transform not through dramatic motivation, but through quiet repetition. A friend who used to live in chaos began waking up and doing one small practice before touching the phone. In a few months, their anxiety softened. Their focus improved. Their relationships calmed down. Another person who felt trapped by self-doubt began writing 1 page a day. Quietly, without telling anyone. A year later, they had a body of work and a new confidence that did not depend on compliments. Someone else who used to react with anger began pausing for one breath before replying. That one breath saved friendships. These are not cinematic miracles. They are real miracles. And they all come from the same root. Awareness guiding effort. Effort done quietly. Quiet effort done consistently. Consistency supported by compassion. Compassion supported by wisdom. That is the path. Thank you for being here with me today. If this talk stirred something in you, I want you to take it as a gentle sign. A sign that you are ready to stop performing your life and start building it. A sign that you are ready to stop chasing applause and start chasing alignment. A sign that you are ready to choose the kind of success that includes peace. Now I want to hear from you. What is one area of your life where you know you need quiet discipline? And what is one small step you can take today without telling anyone? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more long-form teachings like this, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment to support the community. Your support helps this kind of wisdom reach people who need it in the middle of their own struggle. Until next time, keep your effort quiet. Keep your heart kind. Keep your awareness bright. And remember that the strongest success is the one that does not need to be announced.